The moment everything changed in Los Angeles. The sun was soft that afternoon in Los Angeles, the kind of warm light that made the whole city seem gentle for a moment. People walked along the quiet street lined with small cafes and green trees. It was a normal day for everyone else, but something life-changing was about to happen for Sandra. She did not know it yet, but she was minutes away from meeting someone who would shake her heart in a way she never expected. She was standing outside a little bookstore holding a cup of coffee, waiting for Keanu. They had planned to meet for a quiet evening walk, something simple, something peaceful. She looked around, watching cars pass, watching strangers smile and talk, trying to calm the nervous energy in her chest. She did not know why she felt nervous. Keanu was her friend, someone she trusted, someone who always made her feel safe. But today, something felt different, heavier, deeper. Then she saw him. Keanu walked up the street with his usual gentle steps and warm smile. He wore simple clothes, hair slightly messy, eyes soft like always. But he was not alone. Beside him walked an older woman with silver hair tied back neatly, her posture elegant, her face carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had lived through storms and still chose kindness. Sandra froze. Keanu waved gently. "Hey," he said with a calm voice that always felt like a soft blanket. "Sorry I'm late. I want you to meet someone special." The older woman stepped forward with a warm smile. "Hello, dear, I'm Patricia, Keanu's mom." In that single moment, the world around Sandra seemed to pause. Keanu's mother here now. Sandra's breath caught in her throat. She tried to smile, but her heart was beating so loudly she feared they might hear it. She reached out gently. It's so nice to meet you." Patricia held her hand warmly, almost with a softness that went straight to Sandra's heart. "I've heard so much about you," Patricia said with a quiet tone full of meaning. Keanu shifted slightly, a hint of nervousness in his eyes, as if he hoped this meeting would go well but wasn't sure how it would unfold. They walked together into the bookstore cafe. The place smelled like warm paper, old stories, and sweet pastries. Patricia stepped inside first, looking around with interest, while Keanu walked beside Sandra. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you," he whispered. "She arrived early and insisted on coming with me." Sandra whispered back, "It's okay, just unexpected." Unexpected was an understatement. Meeting the mother of a man she admired, respected, and cared for deeply, it stirred a mix of fear, warmth, and something she didn't dare name yet. They sat at a small wooden table near the window. Sunlight framed them like a movie scene. Patricia took a sip of tea and looked at Sandra with sharp, observant eyes. Not judging, not cold, just seeing her in a way that made Sandra feel strangely exposed. After a long, quiet moment, Patricia spoke softly. "You know, Keanu doesn't bring many people to meet me." Keanu lowered his gaze. Sandra swallowed. The weight of those words fell heavily, like a secret she wasn't ready to hold but suddenly had to. Patricia continued, "And when he does, it means something." Sandra felt her cheeks warm. She glanced at Keanu, who looked away with a shy smile that made her chest tighten. Patricia kept watching Sandra gently, almost like she was reading her future. Then she said something that made Sandra's heart stop completely. "I see the way my son looks at you." Keanu froze. Sandra felt her breath catch. Patricia leaned closer, her voice soft but powerful. "And I think he is more afraid of losing you than he is of anything else." The room felt smaller, the air thicker. Sandra didn't know what to say. Keanu didn't move. Patricia smiled kindly. "So I need to ask you, dear, what do you feel for him?" Sandra's hands trembled slightly. Tension filled the room. The story in her heart had just begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. The question that shook Sandra's heart. The cafe felt suddenly too quiet. Even the soft music playing in the background seemed to fade away after Patricia's question. Sandra sat there frozen, her fingers lightly touching the edge of her cup, her heartbeat loud in her ears. She looked from Patricia to Keanu, who seemed just as tense, though he tried to hide it behind a calm expression. Sandra opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. How could she explain something she had never said out loud? How could she put into simple words the feeling that grew every time she saw Keanu's gentle smile, or heard his voice, or watched him show kindness to strangers? How could she explain the quiet warmth she felt when he walked beside her, or the comfort she felt in his presence? She finally said softly, "I care about him." Her voice shook, she felt her chest tighten. "A lot." Patricia smiled slowly, as if she already knew the answer. I can see that. Keanu shifted in his seat, eyes lowered. He didn't say anything, but Sandra could almost feel the emotion moving through him. She wished she knew what he was thinking. Was he embarrassed, hopeful, scared? Maybe all of it. Patricia sipped her tea calmly, then placed the cup down with gentle care. You know, she began softly, Keanu has always been the kind of man who gives everything quietly. He carries the world in his heart, but he never asks for anything in return. She looked at her son with a warm but serious gaze. He has been hurt, and he has lost more than most people know. Sandra listened closely, feeling a sudden ache inside her. When he lets someone into his heart, Patricia continued, it means the person is special, truly special. Keanu looked up at his mother, a silent plea in his eyes. She gave him a reassuring nod, then turned back to Sandra. And you, Patricia said gently, you bring something calm into him. I saw at the moment he walked up the street with you today. It was like the sun was following you both. Sandra felt tears prick behind her eyes. She lowered her gaze, overwhelmed by the truth in Patricia's voice. She didn't want to cry. She didn't want to break down right there in front of them, but something inside her felt seen in a way it hadn't felt seen in years. Patricia leaned forward and touched Sandra's hand softly. Dear, do not fear what you feel. Fear the moments you let pass without being honest. Those words hit Sandra like a wave. She whispered, I'm not used to talking about my feelings. Patricia nodded gently. Most of us are. Keanu finally spoke, his voice low and careful. Mom, please. Patricia turned to him, her expression softening. I'm not here to embarrass you, sweetheart. I just want both of you to understand something important. Keanu sighed softly, then looked at Sandra. Their eyes met. For a moment, everything else disappeared. He looked unsure, but also full of something deeper, something afraid of breaking the moment. You don't have to answer anything you don't want to, Keanu said to Sandra gently. My mom can be direct. Patricia laughed softly. I am old. I have earned the right to be direct. That eased the tension for a second, but then Patricia's voice softened again. Sandra, my dear, I only have one more thing to say. The room grew quiet again. Patricia looked at both of them, her eyes shining with a tenderness that touched the soul. You two remind me of something very rare, two hearts that speak the same language, even when they are silent. Sandra swallowed, her breath trembling. Keanu lowered his eyes again. Patricia continued, so the real question is not what you feel. The real question is, will you be brave enough to let it grow? The words hung in the air, heavier than anything said before. Sandra opened her mouth, ready to speak, ready to tell the truth she had been holding inside for too long. But before she could, the cafe door opened suddenly, and someone rushed inside calling, Keanu. Everyone turned. Someone unexpected had arrived, and the moment was about to change again. The arrival that changed the room. The cafe door swung open so quickly that the bell above it rang loudly, breaking the warm and tense quiet around their table. Sandra turned, Keanu lifted his head sharply, and Patricia leaned back with calm curiosity. A young man rushed inside, slightly breathless, holding his phone in one hand and a worried expression on his face. Keanu, I'm so sorry to interrupt, the man said, rushing over. But we have a small situation outside. You might want to see this. Keanu frowned gently. What kind of situation? The man hesitated, lowering his voice so others wouldn't hear. There's a crowd gathering. Someone saw you through the window. They're starting to take pictures, and it's getting big fast. Sandra's heart tightened. She knew how overwhelming crowds could get for Keanu. She had seen him handle fame with kindness, patience, and quiet strength, but she also knew how much he cherished peace and privacy. Keanu sighed softly, the weight settling on his shoulders. Patricia watched him with motherly understanding. She reached out and touched his arm. Go see what's happening, sweetheart. We'll be right here. Keanu stood up, gently looking at Sandra. I'll be back in a moment. Sandra nodded with a small smile, but inside she felt a strange fear rising. The timing of the crowd, the intensity of the conversation with his mother, the question Patricia had asked her. It all swirled around her like a quiet storm. Keanu stepped outside with the young man, and the cafe felt suddenly emptier without him. Patricia glanced at Sandra, studying her carefully. You look troubled, dear. Sandra took a deep breath. I didn't expect today to be like this. Patricia gave a warm, understanding smile. Life rarely gives us what we expect, but it often gives us what we need. Sandra swallowed hard, her emotions twisting inside her. I don't know if he needs me. Patricia's smile deepened. You are wrong. I have watched my son walk through many seasons of life. I have seen him lost. I have seen him hurt. I have seen him trying to be strong even when his heart was breaking. She paused, her voice soft. And today I saw light in his eyes the moment he saw you standing outside that shop. Sandra blinked fast, her throat tightening. I don't want to hurt him. Patricia gently took her hand again, squeezing it softly. You won't, unless you walk away from the truth inside you. Those words hit Sandra so deeply she couldn't speak. Patricia continued, Sandra, dear, fear is a silent thief. It steals moments we might never get back. A moment of silence passed between them. Then Sandra whispered softly, I just don't know how he feels. I don't want to imagine something that isn't real. Patricia gave her a patient look. You don't need to imagine, just watch how he looks at you. Sandra felt her heart tremble. Patricia added in a quiet voice, and one day, someone who truly loves my son will understand the weight he carries and still choose to stay. Sandra felt her chest tighten with emotion. Is that what you think this is? Patricia smiled kindly. I think this could be the beginning of something beautiful if both of you are brave. Before Sandra could respond, the door opened again. Keanu stepped back inside, closing it quickly behind him. He looked slightly stressed, but he tried to hide it with a gentle smile. There's a crowd, he said softly, sitting back down. But they're calm, they're just excited. Patricia nodded. You handled it well. Keanu shrugged modestly. I just talked to them, told them I appreciated their kindness but needed a little space today. Sandra felt warmth in her chest. She admired his humility deeply. Patricia looked between the two of them. Now, where were we? Keanu raised an eyebrow slowly. Mom. Patricia laughed softly. I know, but I asked Sandra an important question. Keanu turned to Sandra, his voice gentle. You don't have to answer anything you're not ready for. Sandra looked at him, her eyes soft but trembling with emotion. Keanu, I want to tell you the truth. His breath caught. Patricia leaned back with a knowing smile. But Sandra whispered, I need to ask you something first. Keanu's heart seemed to stop. Anything. Sandra took a breath so deep it shook her chest. Why do you look at me the way you do? The room grew silent again. Patricia watched with quiet joy. And Keanu looked like he had been waiting for that question for a very long time. The answer Keanu could no longer hide. The cafe felt too quiet again. The question Sandra had asked hung in the air like a delicate thread that could break with a single wrong breath. Keanu looked at her, stunned, almost frozen. He never expected her to say it so directly, so honestly in front of his mother, in a little bookstore cafe in Los Angeles. Patricia watched with calm eyes, her hands folded gently on the table. She didn't interrupt. She didn't speak. She knew this moment belonged to them. Keanu inhaled deeply, his shoulders rising slowly, as if he was gathering courage from somewhere deep inside. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes soft and vulnerable. Sandra, he whispered, the way I look at you, it's because you make my world feel calm. Sandra's breath trembled. Keanu continued, voice low and sincere, whenever I see you, something inside me feels steady, safe, real. I don't know how to hide it anymore. He paused, searching her eyes. I don't want to hide it. Sandra felt warmth spread across her chest, mixed with fear, mixed with hope. Patricia smiled quietly but stayed silent. Keanu swallowed, as if admitting the next words took every ounce of courage he had. I look at you like that because I care deeply. His voice softened even more than I planned to. Sandra felt her heart drop and lift at the same time. She had hoped for this, feared this, dreamed of this. But hearing it from him, hearing it from his heart, felt like something she wasn't ready for and yet had been waiting years to feel. Keanu leaned back slightly, not wanting to overwhelm her. Now you know. The room held that moment gently. Sandra looked down for a second, trying to hold her feelings together. Her fingers trembled as they wrapped around her coffee cup. Keanu, I didn't know if I was imagining it. You weren't, he said softly. She looked back at him, her eyes warming. I didn't want to fall for an idea. I didn't want to believe something if it wasn't real. Keanu's next words came out in a whisper. It's real. Patricia watched them with tender pride, as if she had always known this moment would come. Sandra exhaled slowly. I'm afraid, she admitted. Keanu's eyes softened even more. I know. Patricia gently placed a hand on Sandra's arm. Dear, fear only means you care. Sandra nodded, blinking quickly, emotions rising too fast. Keanu reached across the table, not touching her hand, but placing his hand close enough that she could if she wanted to. An open gesture. A gentle invitation, not pressure, not expectation. Sandra, he whispered, you asked me why I look at you the way I do. Now I need to ask you something too. Her breath caught. What do you want to ask? Keanu took a slow breath, his expression soft but serious. What do you feel when you look at me? The question dropped like a stone into still water, creating ripples inside her heart. Sandra looked at him, truly looked at him, at the man who showed kindness in every step, the man who listened more than he spoke, the man who respected everyone from strangers to old friends, the man who never pretended to be anything other than who he was. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, the young man from earlier rushed back into the cafe. Keanu, he said urgently, I'm sorry, but the crowd outside is getting bigger. People are blocking the street now. Keanu sighed, rubbing his forehead. Okay, give me a minute. The man nodded and rushed back out. The moment shattered slightly, like a delicate piece of glass touched too quickly. Patricia looked at Sandra and whispered softly, life will always interrupt, but the heart keeps speaking. Sandra nodded slowly. Keanu looked at her again, regret in his eyes for the interrupted moment. We'll continue this, I promise. But before they could even stand up, a loud sound echoed from outside. Not dangerous, but alarming enough to make people in the cafe turn toward the window. A tourist had fallen in the crowd. People gasped, others began pushing. Keanu stood instantly. I need to go, he said, already heading toward the door. Patricia stayed seated, calm, trusting her son. Sandra followed him to the entrance, her heart tight with worry. This wasn't the moment they expected. This wasn't the conversation they wanted to pause. But life had pulled them again. And Sandra, standing in the doorway, whispered to herself, I need to tell him, I can't keep this inside. Yet the moment kept slipping away. The moment she almost lost her chance. The moment Keanu stepped outside, the warm afternoon suddenly felt heavy. Sandra followed him to the doorway, stopping just before the bright sunlight. From there, she could see the crowd that had gathered on the sidewalk. People held phones up, calling his name, some excited, some curious, some just wanting a picture. It wasn't violent, but it was tight and overwhelming. A woman had slipped near the edge of the crowd and was sitting on the ground, holding her ankle in pain. Keanu moved toward her immediately, gently pushing through people while saying, Please step back a little, give her space. His voice was calm, warm, full of care. Sandra watched, her heart squeezing in her chest. Every time she saw Keanu help someone, without cameras, without attention, without ego, she felt something inside her deepen. She admired him in a way she struggled to explain. He knelt beside the woman and said softly, You're okay, I'm here, we'll help you. The woman's eyes widened. Oh my, you're just someone who wants to help, Keanu said gently. Sandra felt her chest warm. This was the man she cared for. The young man from earlier helped guide the crowd to step back. Patricia stayed inside the cafe, watching from her seat with a calm, steady expression, as if she had seen her son handle moments like this many times. After helping the woman stand and making sure she could walk with support, Keanu finally stepped away from the crowd and walked back toward the cafe door. People continued calling his name, but he gave them a polite wave before stepping inside again. Once he closed the door, the noise outside softened. Sandra looked at him with a mixture of pride, tenderness, and fear. Fear not of him, but of her own heart. Keanu sighed softly, wiping a bit of sweat from his forehead. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't want this day to turn into chaos. Sandra shook her head. You did the right thing. He gave her a tired smile. I'm just glad no one was seriously hurt. Patricia looked up from the table as they returned. You handled that well, sweetheart. Keanu shrugged, embarrassed. I just helped. Sandra sat down again, her hands still trembling slightly, not because of the crowd, but because she knew the window to tell him how she felt was closing. Life kept interrupting. Fear kept interrupting. But her heart was louder today than ever before. Patricia looked at her knowingly. "Are you ready to continue your answer, Sandra?" Keanu's heart tightened. He looked at her carefully, every part of him waiting. Sandra opened her mouth, but before she could speak, her phone buzzed loudly on the table. She jumped slightly. A message flashed across the screen. Keanu looked away politely. Patricia sipped her tea. Sandra muted the phone without reading the message. "I want to focus," she whispered. "I don't want another interruption." Keanu's eyes warmed. "I'm listening." Sandra took a deep breath that shook her shoulders. "When I look at you, I feel something calm, something steady. I feel safe. I feel seen." Her voice cracked slightly. "I feel like my heart is trying to tell me something." Keanu leaned in closer, breath quiet. "And when I see you being kind or gentle or helping someone, it feels like there's a light inside you that I can't ignore." She swallowed hard. "So yes, I feel something." Keanu's chest rose with a slow breath. Patricia smiled softly, proud. But Sandra wasn't finished. She looked at him with trembling eyes. "I feel something deeper than friendship, something I didn't plan for, something I've been too scared to name." Keanu's lips parted a little, stunned, grateful, hopeful. But then, the cafe lights flickered once. Then again, everyone in the cafe turned. The power went out. The entire room fell into silence and dimness. Then someone outside shouted something that made Sandra's heart stop. A voice yelled, "KeanuReeves is inside here. Everyone come this way." The crowd began rushing toward the entrance. Customers in the cafe gasped. Keanu's face tightened. Sandra felt a wave of fear, not for herself, but for him. Patricia stood up calmly. "Both of you come with me now." The moment Sandra had waited years to finally speak was cut open again. And now everything was about to change in a way none of them expected. The cafe dimmed in silence, lit only by the soft daylight coming through the windows. Outside, the crowd began pushing closer, their voices rising, footsteps gathering, energy shifting toward the door. Sandra felt her heart tighten as she watched Keanu turn toward the sound, his face calm but alert. He had always handled fame with grace, but she could see the tiredness behind his eyes now. He didn't want chaos. He never did. Patricia stepped forward with surprising firmness for her age. "Come with me," she repeated, her voice clear and steady. "This way." She led them toward a small hallway at the back of the cafe. Sandra followed quickly, Keanu right behind her. The hallway smelled like old books and warm wood. Patricia opened a door that led to a quiet back exit, hidden from the street. "Go," Patricia whispered gently. "Use the alley, it will be calmer." Keanu nodded, but he hesitated, looking at his mother. "What about you?" Patricia smiled softly. "I will stay. I will talk to them. Mothers are good at calming storms." Keanu's eyes softened. "Thank you." Patricia touched his cheek with a loving hand. "Always." As Patricia stepped back inside the cafe to handle the approaching chaos, Keanu and Sandra slipped out the back door. The alley behind the cafe was quiet, cooled by shadows, far from the noise on the other side. The door clicked shut, leaving them alone. They stood there for a moment, breath soft, the afternoon sun painting soft streaks across the far wall. Keanu turned to Sandra, his voice low. "Are you okay?" Sandra nodded, though her heart was still pounding. "I'm fine. I just hate seeing you overwhelmed." He took a slow breath. "I'm used to it, but today, I didn't want the crowd to take this moment away from us." Sandra felt her chest tighten again. "It didn't take it away, not really." Keanu stepped a little closer. "You were telling me how you feel." She swallowed, "Yes." The alley was silent except for the sound of their breathing. Shadows swayed softly on the ground. It felt like time had paused just for them. Keanu's voice softened. "Do you want to finish your words?" Sandra nodded slowly. "I do." He waited. Her hands trembled slightly as she looked up at him. "Keanu, I feel something strong for you, something real, something I'm scared to lose." He closed his eyes for a moment, taking in her words like they were the first rays of sunlight he had felt in years. When he opened them again, they were warm, deep, and full of truth. Sandra, he whispered, I've felt the same for a long time. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to push you or scare you away. Sandra blinked fast, her heart melting. You didn't scare me away. Keanu let out a breath he had been holding for years. Good. She laughed softly through the emotion. I needed time, and I didn't know if your feelings were real. Keanu stepped closer until his voice felt like a gentle blanket around her. They are real, every one of them. Sandra lowered her gaze, overwhelmed with relief and warmth. Then what now? Keanu smiled, small but full of meaning. We take it slow, we protect what we feel, we stay honest, we stay kind. She nodded, tears finally forming in her eyes. I can do that. He reached out carefully, slowly, as if touching something delicate. He gently took her hand. She let him. Their fingers intertwined naturally, easily, like they had waited years for this moment. Keanu whispered, come with me. Where? She asked gently. Nowhere special, just away from noise. Somewhere we can talk, somewhere we can be us. Sandra squeezed his hand lightly. I'd like that. They began walking slowly down the alley, hand in hand. Something warm settled between them, peace, truth, hope. The kind of feeling that didn't need drama or big moments. Just honesty. Just two people finally understanding each other's hearts. As they reached the end of the alley, the back door of the cafe opened again. Patricia stepped out, looking calm and proud. She saw their hands intertwined. Her smile widened softly. Good, Patricia said in a warm voice. I hoped you two would finally stop pretending. Keanu laughed gently, embarrassed. Sandra blushed. Patricia walked toward them, touching Sandra's cheek with kind affection. Dear, my son has carried too much weight for too long. Whatever you feel, hold it with care, and let him hold your heart with the same gentle hands he uses to help the world. Sandra nodded, touched. I will. Patricia turned to Keanu. And you, don't be afraid to be happy. Keanu's eyes softened. Thank you, Mom. Patricia smiled. Now go, both of you, before the crowd finds this alley too. Keanu and Sandra laughed softly and began walking again, fingers still linked. The sun warmed their path. Their hearts finally spoke, and a new chapter began in quiet truth, far from cameras, far from noise, in the gentle space where two souls finally understood what they meant to each other.